Thank you. My name is Muliza, and I'm the communications lead for the Rockefeller Foundation's Africa Regional Office. And I'm here joined with Royce Steiner, the Senior Vice President at the Foundation, focusing around the food initiative. Roy, tell me a bit about your role at the Foundation.
Sure. It's so great to be here, Muliza. So, the Rockefeller Foundation has been around for about 108 years, and in almost the entire time, we've been actually investing in food and agriculture. And my role is really to kind of take that issue, which is so central to so many important issues, and address cutting-edge innovation so that we can actually address the problems that are facing our society.
Okay, thank you for that. And right now, given the burden that is existing globally, the health burden, the food crisis, what is a pressing priority for the Foundation right now in terms of unlocking those innovations?
So, when we took a look at the history, we've focused almost exclusively on productivity. How do we get more yield from every hectare of land? But when you step back, you realize that we've created a food system that has created diets that are now the #1 risk for early mortality. What we're eating is actually killing us. Almost every country in the world, dietary risks are increasing. Secondly, food systems are the #1 emitter of greenhouse gases. So the way we're growing food is actually destroying the planet. And it's these questions of how do we actually build a food system that is actually healthy for us and healthy for the planet. And we need the most incredible creativity and innovation to make that happen.
Right. I know, considering that we work together, I know that a core priority for you is really trying to understand the true value of food. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Sure. One of the challenges with market prices is that they are often just focus on the immediate cost versus all the other costs that are potentially associated with food. And like I said, food diet is now the #1 risk for early mortality. So the kind of food we're eating actually is resulting in all kinds of dietary costs. Diabetes and cancer and all of those sorts of things. If we could just change the way we ate, suddenly we wouldn't have the same level of cost that we have. We actually did this very interesting study in the United States, but it's also applicable for the globe, where we looked at the value that the food system creates. It's about $1 trillion, but all the costs that are associated with that food system. So that includes all the healthcare costs of diet-related diseases. That's about $1 trillion. Biodiversity loss, another 500 million. Environmental degradation, another 500 million. And then economic opportunities. Altogether, over $2 trillion worth of costs that are associated with the $1 trillion of value that the food system creates. So essentially, we've created a value-destroying system. And yet, we know that actually food systems can be value-creating. We can actually have diets that promote health, that eliminate disease, that food is medicine. It's one of the most, I know your mother probably would promote certain kinds of foods for particular diseases. We know that food systems can sequester carbon, that can increase biodiversity and help our water quality. But we haven't designed those systems. We haven't prioritized it because we're so interested in very short-term costs rather than understanding the overall system.
Thank you for that. And I know in some of your sessions, you were really emphasizing, one, in terms of the shift in mindset, even from the Foundation and to other development players, around the strategies around consumption patterns. And I know the Foundation has prioritized good food and looking at what good food actually translates to our core beneficiaries, given that the Foundation's main purpose is to make opportunity sustainable and, making opportunity universal and sustainable. The sustainability aspect is what I want to talk about, and I want to talk about it from a policy perspective. Given, of course, the context that we are on the ground, improving access to healthier diets through some of the projects that we're doing with school feeding. But I'd like us to focus more around the policy aspects. What do you think governments need to do to really understand the true value of food?
Well, I think, first of all, when they're making decisions, to really understand all the associated costs from a societal point of view. For example, even simple things like procurement processes. These states states buy a lot of food, whether it's for schools or hospitals or prisons or whatever. The way you buy that food actually will have a huge impact on the health of your population, but also on the sustainability. One example is, if you take New York State is where I'm from, they've made it a policy that they have to choose the lowest cost food item possible. Well, that's a big issue because, for example, if Chinese apples are 1 cent cheaper than New York State apples that are grown right there in New York State, they have to buy the Chinese apple. But when you look at, you step back and you realize, oh, well, if I buy locally, I'm creating jobs. I'm reducing transport costs for the environment. There's all these benefits that don't get translated into the immediate price of a product. So what we're trying to do is get these procurement policies to take into account the benefits that come from making a better choice, a choice that prioritizes sustainable food, prioritizes food that's been grown in an equitable manner, that actually, pays people a living wage, and ultimately food that is actually more nourishing and not cheap junk food that we tend to feed our children in so many places in the world.
We constantly say that it takes a village. So outside of governments, with other stakeholders in the ecosystem, what else would you think needs to change for this to actually happen, for us to see transformation in food systems?
Yeah, it's going to take all of us. I mean, it actually starts with me and you. When we go to a grocery store or a market, what is the kind of food that we're buying? I think the more we can choose food that is healthy for us, for the planet, we should be asking questions. How was this food grown? Where was it grown? Who grew it? Like, I know that's a lot to deal with as a person, but I think we can make better choices. I think avoiding highly refined foods with the real danger is these ultra processed foods, which are actually often very damaging to an environment as well. So that's one. We have to, it's got to be the scientists and the innovators. We need new products that are healthier for us, and we need the entrepreneurs who can take the risks to try to convince us to eat this way. And then we need, obviously the policymakers to create the environment that allows that to happen. Right now we're subsidizing in a very stupid way. If you took a step back, we subsidize really only 4 crops, and in the U.S., but also universally. And we don't, and many of those crops are the things that are actually making us sick. We subsidize sugar, we subsidize refined wheat, rice, cotton, soybeans sometimes. And yet we don't subsidize a lot of what you would call protective foods, like fruits and vegetables and nuts and things that we know actually protect you from disease. Well, we need to shift that. That doesn't make sense. We also pour all of our research money into just a few crops, whereas and only into certain types of ways of producing those crops. We need to expand that. We need to subsidize and encourage research into all the incredible diversity of foods. Like we have thousands of foods we can eat, but more and more we're eating fewer and fewer foods. And we know that limits the nutritional quality of our diets.
All right. Thank you for that. I think one thing that you've helped us is really truly unpack and really think about when we look down at our plates and we think about what is the value of this food. It's not necessarily just for us as in terms of our human health, but there are other consequential effects that it has. So with the podcast, there's 3 questions that are asked to all guests, and I'd like to ask you the first one. Do you think within your lifetime that you will see zero hunger?
Oh, I certainly think that there's a potential for that. I think that is entirely dependent on the political and community will of the planet. We absolutely can feed everyone. There's no question about that. Are we going to prioritize that? And in order to do that, I think we have to recognize our collective responsibility, that collaboration and cooperation is the key. And, we just have to take a small percentage of military expenditures and put it toward the food systems, and we'd have this problem solved. So don't tell me we don't have enough money. We have plenty of money. It's really about how we prioritize.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a very powerful statement in terms of how we prioritize the funds that we have available to us. My second question is, given that we want to see food transformation by 2030, what are the top 3 trends you think we're going to experience between now and 2030?
Or that we need in order to get there?
Uh-huh.
We have to actually shift our diets to healthier diets, and that means more plant forward. That doesn't mean exclusively vegetarian, but I think we have to move more and more towards plant-centric diets. We know that those are healthier and they're better for the planet. I think we're going to have much better distribution systems that are more equitable. We're living in a world where power and wealth is getting concentrated into fewer and fewer hands. And the natural consequences of that is that more and more people will not have access to food if we allow that to continue. We need a much more equitable economic system. And then the other, I guess, I think we need a lot of innovation, science and innovation towards creating these better crops and more delicious and tasty food that everybody can celebrate.
Right, and then finally, your parting shot. What do you believe? Let me reframe this. What do you think? What is our final question? Sorry. Yes. Okay. Do you need time to think about it? Okay. Okay, of course. I had a moment. I was like, I know it has to do with what does everybody need to do for food. Okay, so let's start this again. So, Roy, kindly, your parting shot. What does each individual need to do, or rather, let me reframe that. What does one need to do to contribute to food security for everybody?
I do think that comes down to our food choices, selecting foods that are more nutritious, more equitable, and are grown regeneratively. And we should be asking the questions from the people who supply us that food. We want this kind of food. We don't want food that destroys the environment, that is grown by virtually slave labor, and that is not healthy for us. Consumers can demand more, and I think we should.
Great. Thank you.